Hello everybody and welcome to Love Speaks Love. I'm Denise, your host, and my wonderful guest today is Damian Nola. Welcome, sweetheart.
Hello.
So just bear with us a second. I don't think there's probably anybody there yet anyway. While we just check that we're live, check the sound, and do all that sharing stuff. And turn down the volume of my phone. Okay. Oh, hello, we have people. Okay, share it to a couple of pages. If anybody feels to share, it is always very welcomed because I'm not in that many groups. I was just saying to Damien that I always know it's the energy strong at this time because my tech brain just switches off. Try and remember who I can share to and who I can't. Light Language Lounge?
I believe you should be able to.
Let's see if I can find it. I'm not sure if that's it. You know, on your phone, it just shortens everything. There's so many groups that say light language, I'll just have to guess. Can you share it there just in case?
Let me just have a look. I can do such. Share to a group.
I'm sharing it to everything that begins with light language.
Yep, that looks like it's done.
Wonderful.
Yeah, Facebook is being a little slow, but it looks like it's complying.
Okay. All right, thank you everybody that's joined us so far. So Damian has been on the show before. Damian and I go back a long time, kind of. We actually share the same Reiki lineage. So we have a Reiki master in common. And when I went to learn Reiki with Valerie, Damian's photo was either on the altar or on the fireplace, but I didn't know him at the time. It was much later that I was like, you're that one from the photo, aren't you? And we also, we were co-facilitators at the Voices of the Light Tribe. That's going to be 3 years, is that? No, was that 2018? Or was that 19? Anyway.
The year before last, yeah.
So we met there in a crystal shop beforehand. And Damian has been working with energy for a long, long time. And he is also a very creative person. He does some amazing, amazing artwork with light language in there as well. And you've been speaking light language, I don't know how long, a long time. So you do feel like a dear brother. So I am very happy to be welcoming you back here today. And we are going to be talking about the energy science of light language. And you've already shared a video on this, which I found really, really interesting. So I really wanted to bring you on for this because it's not something that I've actually ever heard spoken of before. And my kind of nerdy science brain really likes to hear of these things. So while people are gathering, I'm going to just start with our heart-to-heart connect, just to bring us all into our heart space. And one of the reasons why I began Love Speaks Love is just for that. It is my dream that before too long, we will all be present in our hearts, living from our hearts, making our decisions from our hearts. And the more we do that, the more we practice doing that, the more we actually stay in our heart space. So I invite us all to breathe into our hearts, taking a few long and slow deep breaths, and just feel your awareness in your energetic heart space, which is in the center of your chest. And let us all breathe in love and breathe out anything of the day so far or the day ahead, anything that may be stopping you from being in this now moment. And let's breathe love deep into our bodies. Let's breathe it all the way down to our toes, if we can, and all the way up to the top of our heads. And intending to breathe love deep into ourselves, deep into the DNA, all the way to the excuse me, to the subatomic particles, to the light that is in every cell of our bodies. And extending our heart awareness out and recognizing that all of our hearts are connected. And feeling all of our hearts beating as one. And connecting our hearts to the heart of Gaia now. So extending that awareness out, down into the earth, deeper and deeper down. Through all of the layers of earth, to the crystal diamond heart in the center of the earth. And emanating out from Gaia's beautiful crystalline heart is a crystalline matrix of energy. So connecting in with that and just calling into our bodies any crystalline frequencies that would be of benefit to us all right now. And also calling up from Gaia's heart the energy of any nutrients, elements, electrolytes, amino acids, anything at all that our body would find useful right now. Because Gaia holds the energy of everything that is of the earth within her heart. And feeling Gaia's love flowing into our bodies. Feeling her gratitude for all that you are, all that you do. Feeling her recognition of you. And feeling Gaia's love moving into every cell of your body. And connecting our hearts now, extending our heart awareness out to the sun. And feeling the sun's energy returning to us, going deep into our bodies, deep into our cells. And extending our heart awareness out now to Source Creator. Breathing source energy deep into ourselves. And just feeling our bodies relaxing. feeling our hearts in the one unified field of love. And taking a few more long and slow deep breaths. And I invite you to place one or both hands on your heart space and say to your beautiful hearts, I love you. I love you. I love you. Knowing that the energy of that will resonate to every heart on the planet. So if your eyes are closed, just opening them whenever you're ready. Welcome, Damian.
All beautiful to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me, Denise, to share a little. This is one of my favorite subjects to speak on, actually.
Yay. So I'm curious, actually, how was this information that was kind of downloaded to you? How's the journey been to kind of to be in your knowing of this?
Yeah, it's a combination of having studied it and then a combination of simply just tracking what happens in the energy system in relationship to bringing through different particular streams of sound. So there's a whole science that accompanies mantra and how that relates to the chakra system and the nadi system, which I've studied quite extensively. And then there's also just the observation of the energy system, and the ability to track energy and what's opening in the system. Yeah. And then just sitting and receiving guidance around such, also in relationship to how the energetic body activates in relationship to different frequencies of sound and in relationship to the focus of our intention.
Beautiful. And was that when you say you've studied that? Was that when you were in India?
It's been like various different sources of studies. So yeah, stuff from the Vedic tradition, stuff from the Buddhist tradition, from Egypt, a lot of stuff from various different mystery school traditions. Lots of different sources rather than one particular one that I could say, well, yeah, this source or this source. All cultures in one way or another have worked with sound or mantra, and they describe it subtly differently, but they're obviously pointing to the same thing.
And you was kind of still a child when you began your journey with energy. Like you've been doing this a really long time.
Yeah, about 25 years.
Yeah.
Like
so this is second nature to you.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. Okay, so where would you like to start with this? Shall I just let you kind of just flow?
Yeah, I'll just give a basic introduction to the energy science, and then if you have any questions, I can expand upon that. But if we really look at language as sound, we see creation as a manifestation of sound. In the Vedic tradition, they talk about that in terms of Om, so the AUM, which represents the creative aspects, the destructive aspects, and those aspects which sustain or preserve creation. And then we can also see that in terms of the Trinity, such as represented through many different traditions. In the Vedic tradition, it's represented by Brahman, Vishnu, Shiva, Christian tradition, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, etc., etc. And then how that relates into what we see as being the threefold flame within the heart. We can see light language as really a language of the heart, a communication of the heart, a communication of our true nature or essence. And how that relates to the threefold flame is it in terms of how that flame represents light or information. So really this focus of an alignment with truth, an alignment with true nature. And when we are bringing through frequencies that align with that particular stream, what we call light language, we're really bringing through those frequencies that are creating that deep transformation of our brain chemistry, that deep transformation of our fundamental experience of reality in terms of aligning us with truth rather than our egoic perception of the world and ourselves. And then the secondary stream would be that which relates to love, which is really this deep focus of a development of compassion, self-love, forgiveness, that love that transcends our human concept of love, which is generally very distorted and messy. And so we're really aligning with what the truth of actual love is. And a lot of what comes through that particular stream is also the dissolution of the egoic sense of self. So it really drops us into this place of selflessness in that sense. And then the third aspect relates to what we call power or creation or the manifestation of divine intention or will. So when we're aligning with that, it's really that deep surrender into grace, that deep focus of a surrender into allowing divine intention to move through us. And so we can see those as the three primary aspects of the language of light, or the language of the heart, and what it can open to us and how it can benefit us within our lives. So just to quickly recap on that, one aspect of that would be the language of light, which is really that deep alignment with truth, with wisdom, with clarity. So when we find ourselves in life with a lack of clarity, we find ourselves really caught up in our mind and our story. And what am I supposed to be doing with my life? Really, an alignment with the language of light brings in that presence of truth, brings in that presence of wisdom and clarity. It can bring in a deep understanding also. And then the language of love is really that focus of the healing power of love and deep intimacy and bringing us into oneness and forgiveness and bringing us into a space of selflessness. So that dissolution of the egoic sense of self. And then the third aspect being that aspect that has to do with that focus of alignment with divine intention and power. And so when we move into expressing that, we're really moving into the expression of what supports us to birth our passion within life, and really what supports us to step out of those patterns of conditioning that we have around power issues, and all that stuff around control and what power is and powerlessness, etc., etc. And then how that relates into a focus of all of the various different streams that people experience through the language of light. So for example, some people may say I'm speaking Syrian or Palladian, or they may say I'm expressing an energy that comes from the elemental realm or the dragon realm. It really has to do with how those three streams that sit within the heart express through the central channel of the energy system. And so we have what is termed in most traditions as being the inner earth or ancestral channel, which is that aspect of the energy system that sits between the heart and the core of the earth. And when the heart flame, so that threefold flame, which expresses as love, light, and power, moves through that channel, we are tuning into specific octaves of light that sit within that channel. And so, for example, the first octave that we encounter through that channel is what is referred to as the elemental plane of consciousness. And that relates to 5 elements: earth, air, fire, water, ether, or space. And really our relationship with how it is that those elements form creation or form the body. And so a lot of what we will see as our experience of nature magic, the Davic realms, really opens up through our connection to that first octave of that channel. And to really deepen in that channel requires a dropping of identification with that. And so our identification with where we are the body, where we are the mind, where we are our emotions. And as we drop that, we drop into deeper and deeper octaves of that channel. And deeper octaves of that particular channel really bring us into what most traditions refer to as the void or space, or what they associate with as being the womb of creation, that deep divine mother presence that holds us through the body of the earth. And then we have what is known as the celestial or higher self aspect of the channel, which sits between the heart and the higher chakras. The first octave of that forms between the heart chakra and the soul star chakra, which sits just above the crown chakra. And when we open up that particular octave of the channel, we're opening into what is termed as our soul language. And so we're really tuning into that expression of ourself as soul, which I personally see and experience as simply being a higher dimensional aspect of ourselves. And so that particular higher dimensional aspect, because it exists in a higher dimensional bandwidth, has a lot of light there, there's a lot of wisdom there, a lot of love there, there's a higher overview of existence. It's still an egoic overview because it's still bound within space-time in that way, but it is a higher overview that begins to come through and express itself. So it's a shifting out of where we are usually experiencing ourselves as the egoic identity or the I, into an understanding of I am more than that. I am a soul in that way. And then the next octave of that opens up through the stellar gateway chakra, which sits just above the soul star. And that connects us into what most people experience as connection with cosmic or universal life. So a lot of those language streams that come through in terms of Palladian, Syrian, Arcturian, etc., are all sourced through that particular octave of that channel. And each of those also bring through a particular quality of energy or expression. And there's a whole other science to that, but I want to keep it quite simple here. Also in terms of what I was touching upon in terms of the ancestral channel, when different octaves of that open up, there's different energies and streams which will activate and have a different focus of effect within the system. And those are really all overlighted by those 3 primary streams of light, love, and power coming through. So we can open up, for example, the light stream through the ancestral channel and a particular octave of that. And that will bring through a particular transmission of light through that stream. And working through the ancestral channel, that's going to be deeply related to a focus of grounding, embodiment, safety within the form. Working through the higher self channel is going to have a different quality of effect. And then oh yes, thank you. That's my train of thought. In terms of the higher self channel, when that opens up, it really opens us into deep experiences of oneness with all of life. And so there's a even deeper expression of that bigger picture that comes through in relationship to that, even more so than when we are connected on that soul level. But it's still held within egoic consciousness to some extent, even though it's very subtle there. The clue there is the word self, higher self. And the clue there is also that even though there is the experience of oneness, there's still a sense of someone having that experience of oneness or being one with everything. And that's a very beautiful experience, and nothing wrong with it whatsoever, but it's not ultimately it. So what happens in terms of opening beyond that is the opening of what we call the divine or source channel, which is really where that whole sense of the person that is experiencing themselves as one with everything dissipates, and there's just oneness, just what is. And that moves through the whole channel. And so in terms of like you were touching upon with the meditation, that connection into the core of the earth, that connection to the sun, and then that connection into the unified field. All traditions have some form of that they practice in one way or another. And that's really that simple opening of the central channel that we're speaking about. And in terms of the energy science of light language, we're simply talking about how threefold flame travels through that channel in order to activate different octaves of it, and then how that expresses through the vehicle of sound, movement, coded written form. And there are subtle differences in terms of the transmission of such, in terms of how it comes through, if it's spoken or verbalized, or if it's kinetic, or if it's drawn. If it's sounded, again, this is a general rule rather than being firmly set in stone. If it's sounded, it tends to have more of an effect in terms of transforming our consciousness and working very much with our brain chemistry. And if it's movement based, it tends to have more of an effect in terms of like bridging of that through the physical form and really bringing that into the body and grounding that through the body. There tends to be a lot of what's what I'm looking for? I'll just say bridging, for want of a better word, into the genetics and the ancestral field of consciousness that takes place through that focus of movement. A lot of that movement can also be related to the opening of various different energy pathways within the form. And then if it is coded or drawn, it tends to be a sort of combination of those two that comes through within relationship to them. There's a way in which drawing it or coding it physicalizes it or grounds it in a certain way, that, at least to my experience of such, isn't as present within when it's spoken or just movement. The actual the whole process of drawing something and coding something, there's obviously a deep alignment that needs to take place within relationship to that. And then it's anchored and grounded in a certain way, whereas when it's spoken, it's spoken and it's gone out there, but then it's done. Whereas when it's grounded, it's like it's here in a certain way. So it creates a certain focus of bridging for it in that way.
Just just hold that thought for a second.
Yep.
So I just want to, because I'm also going to make some notes for when I put this on YouTube as well. So I want to make sure that I'm kind of clear with it in my head. So the threefold flame, and you've got the love, the light, and the creation.
Mm-hmm.
And then in terms of how that kind of identifies, that's not quite the right word, but with light language, like the three there. So you've got the elemental plane.
Mm-hmm.
No, sorry, you said the ancestral channel, didn't you? And the elemental plane is part of that.
Yeah, it's the first octave that opens up through that particular channel.
So the ancestral channel, the celestial channel.
Mm-hmm. And then what is called the divine or source channel.
Right. Yeah, got you. Okay.
So the ancestral channel is that one that sits between the heart and the core of the earth.
Yeah.
And then the celestial or higher self sits between the heart and the higher chakras, basically going up, up, up.
Yeah. And then,
you know, commonly we think of source as sort of being up there, simply because of how the energy system activates and the activation of the higher chakras. But source is everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, so we kind of tend to think of, okay, I'm going up to connect with source. But you know, that source channel is actually the whole channel.
Yeah.
You know, so it's up, down.
Yeah.
And then even in terms of looking at it in relationship to the, you know, the ancestral channel, just simply because of how the energy system is set up, we connect downwards. But again, that's, you know, a simplification of it. But you know, it's useful in terms of giving our minds a particular type of focus in that way. But it is a slightly dualistic way of looking at it.
Yeah.
But to keep it simple, we'll say ancestral channel down, ancestral channel up.
And just in terms of the octaves as well, so you could also call that perhaps frequency bandwidths, but octaves is something that we know from music. But I also got the image when you said about that of it being quite fractaloid as well. So within the octave, it's almost like there's your octave of notes, but you can kind of go in there and it kind of opens up into another. Yeah, okay. And I will just say as well, if anyone, I will keep an eye out for questions, and I'll try my best to get to those as well if people do want clarification over things. Okay, back to you. Thank you.
So, what else to say in relationship to that? I'm just thinking, because I want to keep it, as I said, quite simple without going into a huge depth of it. But I think what it would be useful to do actually would be to, you know, give people an example of how those streams move through those different octaves.
Yeah.
You know, and a simple invitation, you know, people to join in with that. You know, a sense of, a lot of people ask me, you know, how do we actually open to light language? And so to give you some keys within relationship to that. And so the first key I would say is really it all comes through the heart. It all comes through that transmission of that flame through the heart. And so fundamentally, it's our focus of connection with that, which is, you know, empowering our connection with the language of light and its expression. And connecting with that is really just as simple as dropping into your heart. And so I'd just invite you to do that with me now if you wish to. And just to have the sense that within your heart is this source of absolute light, absolute truth, wisdom, clarity, divine intelligence, It's the divine intelligence that is behind all of creation, moves through all of creation as this source of absolute love, this source of absolute power. The sense of dropping into that. The sense that that somehow mysteriously begins to move. Through the central channel or core of your energy system. Down into the center of the earth. As it does so, we're simply holding a focus of intention for it to open the first octave of that channel. We're holding the focus of intention for it to open up the light within that octave. And then we just wait for something to arise within response to that. You may feel that as a sound or a movement. You may feel that as a subtle sensation. I invite you just to explore that for a few moments. I'm just going to begin to invite the love that is present within that first octave of the ancestral channel. You begin to activate. Just begin to notice how in response to that, there's a different quality of energy that begins to arise. Again, that may arise as a sound or a movement, some kind of sensation. For some people, this is experienced as a kind of rocking sensation within the body. And that's simply that frequency activating through that first octave of the channel. And that eventually stabilizes itself into a kind of core stillness. It's that stillness that really drops us into deeper octaves of the ancestral channel. Inviting you to begin to have a sense of that now. Of how that rocking or movement can be associated with all of this movement of mind. So as you're dropping into stillness, you're dropping out of identification with mind, out of identification with all of that internal movement into what's deeper. And it's this that also creates this focus of a deeper appreciation of the relationship between what we're calling light and what we're calling love. This really opens us into a focus of alignment with power, with divine intention, and surrender into that. And it opens us into an appreciation of what arises when our heart is open. And when that focus of truth or light moves through the open heart, expresses itself with that quality of love and compassion. As that moves through the ancestral channel, also supports us to deepen within presence. This is one of the practical applications of how working with light language and working with the energy system in this way can support us within life. Support us to really show up, to be here. To feel safe to do so. A lot of what inhibits the opening of the ancestral channel is this focus of a lack of presence, a focus of what creates us to disassociate from life, which we can simply call trauma. And so as we sit in the ancestral channel, as we ignite the love and the light through the ancestral channel, there's also a transmutation of those patterns of past experience that have created us to disassociate. you consider what we associate with those chakras that sit within the ancestral channel, all of those chakras that sit beneath the heart. You begin to gain a deeper understanding of this. So very briefly, for example, the solar plexus, those issues that relate to self-protection. The sacral chakra, those that relate to interpersonal relationship, sexuality. The root chakra, those that relate to a sense of safety. And so on and so forth. I'm just inviting now a deeper activation of that flame of love and of light through the ancestral channel. And how that focus of relationship between love and light gives rise to power. And that's a slightly dualistic way of looking at it. In reality, this love, this light, this power are indivisible from one another. But we language it in this fashion because it gives you a useful model to work with. So we're just beginning to open now into the celestial channel or higher self channel. You have a sense of the first octave of that as sitting between the heart chakra and the soul star chakra, which is approximately 6 inches above the crown chakra. And we're just inviting the light to ignite through that first octave of the celestial channel. Just notice how that begins to generate a shift from out of how it is that you usually experience yourself through your sense of self. How that begins to align you with the deeper dimensional reality of the truth of who you are. And we invite the love to ignite through that aspect of the channel. Begin to open up the second octave of that channel that sits between the heart and the stellar gateway chakra, which is approximately 18 inches above the crown chakra. It's here that we open into connection with what most traditions refer to as the higher self. With galactic, cosmic, universal life. Many of those language streams that people describe as Syrian, Arcturian, Palladian, Venusian, angelic, archangelic. And through the simple focus of our intention, we can specifically tune into one of those frequency bands. So, for example, you bring through Syrian, and simply sit within this particular octave of the higher self, or celestial channel, igniting the love and the light through the channel between our heart and the stellar gateway. Holding this focus of intention to connect with what most traditions would refer to as our Syrian higher self. And then, as with the ancestral channel, we simply wait. What arises within response to that? Briefly touched upon earlier how different language streams have a specific focus of divine intention that moves through them, that creates a variety of different effects. So Syrian is seen to deeply relate to the expression of divine truth, higher wisdom, divine mind. Or if we were to intend Venusian, this would deeply relate to compassion, forgiveness, love, presence of Divine Mother. If we were to intend angelic, this would deeply relate to a focus of bringing through a frequency that would support us to feel deeply held and nurtured. Deeply support a kind of alignment with divine intention. Surrender into that. So hopefully this gives you a focus of a deeper appreciation of different aspects of the central channel. Just dropping into the source channel now. To the sense of being in your heart. the spine. And often the experience of being in the source channel is very different than that of being in the ancestral or higher self channel. As I touched upon earlier, in the ancestral channel or higher self channel, there's still a subtle sense of ego that's present, even if that exists in a higher dimensional form. Whereas when we sit in the source channel, that isn't present. And that source channel, because it encapsulates the entirety of the central pillar, also moves and expresses through the ancestral channel, through all octaves of it. Moves and expresses through all octaves of the higher self or celestial channel. We have a few moments to sit with that. Ask any questions, share any experiences. And then I'll share a little bit more in terms of what we've just explored can also relate to the nature of our journey with light language and how it develops. Thank you.
Thank you, Damian. That was really interesting, and I would suggest to people to re-listen to this, because some of the differences can be quite subtle. So I think the more you tune into this, because it's quite specific what you've kind of directed to, and I think it'll be something that, you know, that might take a few times as well to be like, okay, now I get what that is. Now I get what that is. And then it might be kind of easier for the flow, for the, you know, if something is wishing to be expressed through you from those channels, to allow that to come through and like feel the subtle differences between. And I would just like to go back before we go on from this, because there was a question about the drawn codes. Just asking for a little bit more clarity about what the drawn code brings in, maybe as opposed to what the written one does.
Mm-hmm. So any written or drawn code can also be bridged through from these particular different octaves of the channel. So, for example, if I was to bring through an angelic code, I'd tune into that specific aspect of the celestial or higher self channel that relates to that particular octave, simply again through that focus of intention. This is all done through intention. So it's not complicated in that sense. And then I would sit with that, and just as I would speak language or move in relationship to that, just allow myself to draw. And so it's bringing through or grounding through a specific stream of angelic consciousness in that way. When that is spoken, or when there's movement in relationship to that, there's a transmission of that takes place. And that creates a transformation within consciousness and the energy system. But when it is drawn, as I touched upon earlier, it's like it's grounded or physicalized, there's a sense of bridging it and bringing it into form in that way. So for myself, there's just a sense of deeper bridging with it, which is, if we look at energy science, there's a sense of being able to access the stream. There's a sense of being able to transmit it, but there's also a sense of how deeply are we able to actually bridge that into creation, to actually ground it and embody it. And when we are sitting with code work, there's a whole sense of sitting in that stream, sometimes for many, many days, to draw very elaborate or complex codes. Even with simple codes, there can be a deep focus of alignment that is necessary to actually anchor through the frequency to bring that through. So yeah, I mean, the simplest answer I can give again is just to come back to say there's a deeper sense of bridging with it that is required.
Yeah, thank you. And it was interesting. What came to mind when you were talking us through the ancestral channel is that sometimes people are very connected up there and they're not very connected there. So to consciously connect with the ancestral channel actually does bring us into our bodies, which, as you say, can bring stuff up that's there. Yep. Too. But that is really good practice to do, because often people are up here and it's very clear up here, but we need to be both. And I wonder if what we're aiming for is the third octave, like the source, where it's everything all at once rather than one or the other. And if we're not fully working with our lower chakras, then we can't really do that. So to practice working with that ancestral channel is really helpful, to do that and to allow whatever needs to come up and be with that and be very present with our lower chakras. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yes, that actually moves on nicely into what I mentioned I was going to touch upon. So that activation of the ancestral channel is really what most traditions would first focus upon for that very reason, and really to create that deep sense of presence and embodiment, and I suppose purification type practice. So clearing out a lot of one's karma, a lot of one's conditioning, and so that when the higher self channel opens, that that wisdom or that light actually has a clear space to land or ground, because you bring in that higher frequency through the higher chakras, and there's a lot of stuff sitting in the system. It's going to hit up against it, and it's sometimes not pretty, as we both know. Whereas if that inner work has been done, there's a sense of the light can actually just ground through and express itself in that way. And so yeah, when we first open through the ancestral channel, we're really doing that inner work, as I touched upon. We're clearing out that trauma and what keeps us from being present within life. And then that really allows that deep depth of surrender to actually receive the light into the system, because we've had many, many experiences within previous incarnations of powerful transmissions of light coming into the system, and the system's fried itself. And so it's important to do that inner work, so that light can be anchored and grounded through without triggering or re-traumatizing us. And then, as you were saying, that really opens us into that focus of a relationship with the whole channel, or the source channel, where that flame is really just ignited through the heart and through our whole central pillar. And so when we first begin to open on the path as a sort of general rule. For most people, there's this focus of like connection with guides, connection with higher dimensional beings, with angels, archangels, celestial beings, etc., etc., etc. And then as that deepens and deepens and deepens, what tends to happen is there's this deep opening just into this relationship with the divine. And then all of that sort of falls away. And then what happens is all of that comes back. But it is really seen as a rising of divinity through the field of oneness. Whereas when it first begins to open, there's a sense of personal egoic relationship within that. So there's a sense of me as ego and this angel, and we're communicating, or me and this elemental being, and we're communicating. And then as that source channel opens, there's the sense of the angel, me, but oneness, and just the flow of divinity dancing through that. That's a really simple way of putting it. The mind is going to hear that and obviously put its own spin on what that means. It's only really when we open to that that we really taste what that actually means. But describing it, gives a pointer in that way, so it's useful to describe it. Even though the mind hears it and doesn't actually necessarily hear what is being communicated, it's still useful, because it's like, okay, that point, that direction, you're going there.
Yeah, beautiful. And for me, a lot of the idea is to really bring these source codes through, these codes, these light codes through fully to earth, to be anchored, because it's for me, I guess it's partly for my benefit, but it's also for Gaia's benefit, and it's probably in lots of ways more for Gaia. In a way, it's Gaia primarily. And I feel too that when your source channel is open, because I was feeling into this, it's not like you close off the source channel to just feel the ancestral. The source channel is probably still open, but you're actually just focusing on the ancestral one or on that one. But it's like all three can be open at the same time, but you can tune into which aspects of those that you wish to.
Exactly. And yeah, as I with these source codes where you're saying, it's for me, but it's more for Gaia. It's, as the source channel opens, we're really in that place of selflessness, in that place of oneness. And so, it includes us, but it includes the earth, it includes humanity. It's not just I'm bringing this through for me or for this. Also, when we're in the source channel, there's really that dropping away of our focus of personal intention or will.
Yeah.
More into that mystery of divine intention just arising through us.
Yeah.
Which is always actually happening, but when we're in egoic identification, there's a sense of me and my will driving the show.
Yeah.
Apparently. Whereas when we're in the source channel, that dissolves. It's just divine intention.
Yeah.
Moving through.
Now we'd kind of, I'm just looking at the time, but there is a question. There's lots of comments people's experiences, which I won't go through all those because we can read those later. But I'm not fully understanding this, but let me read it to you and see if you're grasping this. So as a healer, are you finding that you can go straight to intention instead of going through steps learned in, say, Reiki and other modalities?
Yeah, I think what they are asking is, for example, like in Reiki, you may have a certain sort of set of steps that you do in terms of a session, or symbols that we work with. Whereas, with intention, it's just like, okay, I just intend this and it happens. Like similar to, I suppose, to learning to ride a bike. When you first learn to ride a bike, you're going, God,
pedal,
what am I doing?
pedal.
Exactly. And it just becomes second nature.
Yeah.
So, yes, certainly there is, that evolves and develops. I was talking about sitting with this particular aspect of the channel and tuning into it, and like you touched upon, it would be useful for people to revisit that, to get a sense of that. But then, with time, that just becomes second nature.
Yeah.
So rather than going, okay, I'm going to tune into this chakra and intend for it to open and for this to happen and this to happen and this to happen, it's just, you just hold that focus of intention, and the system knows what it's doing, so it just automatically does that. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think just to on the back of that say, it's not like you would go through all these steps every time you were doing something. You just do it, and I think that's why I was a little bit confused as well, because it's like, because obviously we're both Reiki practitioners, but we just do it. And I think I'd almost forgotten that there might be steps steps to go through for that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Pamela. Yeah, lots of body feelings too. Tingles in the legs, and the tingles could be like things kind of coming online too. And I'll just read this last comment. Source channel is what came through this this live, and was doing its own weave through us, shown through the sound, silence, and weaves. Yeah, nice. Is there more you want to add?
I think that's been a nice little nutshell introduction. Just to recap very briefly in terms of how really light language is really a language of the heart, and if you understand that, you've got it. It's really that simple. It's really that simple focus of connection with the heart. I mean, I've spoken somewhat about the energy science of it, and I could speak a lot more about the energy science of it. And it's useful to have that understanding. And but also, that is balanced with our focus of surrender, and our focus of really that letting go into the heart. And there's a story that I can't remember exactly who it was who told the story, but they're speaking about a priest who maybe has been doing it for like 30, 40 odd years and has become very complacent, and is kind of like, here is the blood of Christ and here's the body. Versus, a priest who maybe has been doing it for 6 months but has a really deep, focused surrender relationship with Christ, and just goes in there and is like really open-hearted, and it's completely different, the transmission that comes through. And so, even if you don't take on board anything else that I say, And you're not going, okay, you're a bit like, okay, I'm not going to spend that time sitting in my channel, and I don't have time to do that. Just sit in your heart and open to it. All of what I've been describing automatically happens as you drop into the heart. I'm just basically describing what happens on an energy level, because it's interesting and it's useful to have that particular focus of an understanding. Sitting with it develops your awareness of that and deepens you within that particular aspect of your energy system. But equally, all of that is actually happening just through that focus of connection with your heart. And that's the fundamental key call to it. As simple as that. And be playful with it as well. It's a very playful exploration. There's nothing to get right here as well. When people hear the words of science, they can sort of go, ooh, okay, so I need to understand it with my mind. And there can be beautiful understandings that we come to with our mind. It's not to discount that by any means, but if we become locked within that, we miss the play and the magic of it, which is really the fundamental key.
And I think the same goes for the word language. Two people can almost think it has to be spoken in a certain way. It has to be certain words in there. And language, this is a whole other show really, but language is a slightly misleading word. It's expression, it's transmission that is coming through your mouth in whatever way that might be. And for me, it aside from a sentence, it started coming through in tones. I could tell in my sessions that it was just another way of the light coming through my body. It comes through my hands, it comes through my whole aura, but it's just another way of expressing that, actually it coming out of your mouth and through your vocal cords. So it doesn't have to be a certain way. And if it doesn't sound like other people's, that doesn't matter. There's so many different ways that it can be expressed. And sometimes it can be that it starts coming through when you're listening to someone else's light language. So if you're watching something and you just, it's almost like you can't hold it back anymore. You just want it all to come out. And even if you're wanting to do this, even just starting off speaking gibberish, so just letting any sounds come through that want to come through, whether it's shouts, screams, that kind of thing, whatever it is. And that often clears whatever might be stuck there, that's kind of holding it back. And then it kind of goes more into free flow. And also being out in nature might be another time as well. Like if you find yourself alone in nature, speaking with the trees or the birds or the earth or the sea or whatever, you might find that it starts to come out quite easily then too. Thank you, Damian. What have you got coming up?
If people are interested in exploring light language in deeper depth, myself and Suzanne and Mara, who I'm sure many of you who are watching are also familiar with, hold a regular light language lounge, which is free. So you're very welcome. Details of that are posted on my own page on Facebook, Damian Nola, you can find me, or Suzanne's page, which I believe is the Light Evolutionary, or you can just look up Suzanne Amara. You can also ask to join the mailing list through contacting Suzanne, and she will get that to you, and that will have all details of that. Myself, I am holding an event on the 23rd of this month, so in about 10 days from now, which is a Love on Fire event. It's a healing group meditation event, and we will be working with what I'm terming as being the wounded heart. So the transformation of what creates us to guard our heart, to withhold love from ourselves or others, this deeper dropping into love, compassion, self-forgiveness, and unity. And details of that, again, are on my page on Facebook, or you can just message me for them, or I will be updating my website, which is awakeningheart.co.uk, with details of that in the next day or two. So you can also check out the website as well.
Wonderful. And I know a lot of your work, like mine really, is around the heart, and same desire really for people to be in their heart space, and it's something that you've been doing a long time. So yeah, I highly recommend Damian's work. Thank you, sweetheart. It's been awesome to connect. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. That was really informative. And thank you everybody who's joined us. And if you find it helpful, please share. And I will put my PayPal link in the comments as well. The Love Speaks Love it is a service work for me. It is it is something that I do from my heart. But if anybody feels that they wish to contribute that, it is always welcomed and appreciated. So thank you, Damian, so much. If you ever feel like going deeper with this, if you ever want to come back for that, you'd be most welcome. Or for anything else that you want to talk about. And thank you everybody for watching, either with us live or on the replay. So thank you everybody, and until next time, we will see you soon. Love, love, love.